Okay, so let's start with the Cloudockit report. This is a typical Cloudockit report that is generated when you scan your environment. You can decide several different formats, but in this case, we chose to show you the Word document. So typically, you would have the Cloudockit logo like this with the blue background, but you can decide your own template at some point. I'm going to show you how to do that. Then we end up in the executive summary. Executive summary will show you when the scan occurred, on which subscription or subscriptions if you're scanning more than one subscription. Then you will have a map that shows you the location of your resources with a table detailing those location and the number of resources you've got per location. The next table will show you the number of component types you have. So for example, we can see here 15 logic apps, 2 network watches, 6 application, etc. You can see here the number between brackets is actually the evolution. So we can see that we've got -2. This is because I activated the track changes. I will show you later how to activate the track changes, but this will indicate that I've lost 2 logic apps, and we'll see also further in this document what that means really. Then still in the executive summary, we can see some billing information. So here billing per category in US dollars with the legend on the right. 30 last days of cost, so you can see the evolution of your cost per day. And a very interesting diagram that shows you the 10 most expensive resources in your subscription. So you can quickly identify the ones that are, for example, the data disks, your VM data disk still on while the VM is off, for example. So that could be an easy way to locate some recurring costs that you shouldn't pay for if you've shut down the VM. Then since I activated the track changes, I have some more details about the changes that have been detected. So you got 3 columns: added, deleted, changed, and then you've got the component types. So resource group, website, application, storage account, and this is the extent of what has been detected on my environment. But if it was a customer production environment, you would have probably more than that. So what we see here, for example, for the added, we see that 1 logic app has been added and 3 have been removed. So you understand that 1 minus 3 is the -2 that we saw earlier in the table. You can see the ones that have been deleted. We can see also that some storage accounts have been changed. So if we look at the properties below, when we go further down below in the list of resources, we will have more information about the changes. So for example, if we look for a storage account, let's have a look at this one. Let's Control C and check Control V here and look at it. And if we go to the storage account here, I guess we're going to find this one here. And the changes table or section here tells us that the used capacity, the previous value was unknown, and the current value is now 3.8 megabytes. The previous value was unknown because at the time of the scan that occurred there was no value. There was no information, but it's been detected like this. So let's go back to the executive summary. So we see the changes here. After that, we have the document generation section that will show us the filters that were applied on the different resources. We have the list of components that were detected, a list of resources that were detected based on what has been scanned and the workloads that have been selected. We can also have a summary of the filters that have been applied on the resource groups based on their names. So we will see in the configuration how you can explicitly include some resource groups based on their names or exclude them. This works for Azure, doesn't work for AWS or GCP because you don't have this resource group concept. Well, not the same as Azure. But in all configurations, in all platforms, on all platforms, you've got the tag concept. So you will be able to filter by the tag name, and you can also filter by the tag name and the value. We'll see more examples of that. Then you've got a hints sections that will redirect to our knowledge base based on the resources that have been detected. You will be able to see some hints here, and for example, in this case, improve artery diagrams with layout optimization. You can go there and have more information. So this all depends on what has been detected in your environment. Let's close that down. And then we enter the billing section. Again, this is a development environment, not much to see there. Here we see Azure App Service, the price, storage billing. On production environment, you would see much more than that, obviously. The compliance section. The compliance section, I will skip the compliance standards for now, but I'll get back to it. The compliance section will show you the different rules that have been applied on the resources. So you've got the list of resources on the left, their type in the second column, and we apply some rules based on availability, best practices, security, performance, and billing. Those rules come from Azure for Azure, they come from Amazon for AWS, and they come from Google for GCP. We have interpreted those rules in order to apply them to our when we scan the resources, and we provide an indication on the fact that they comply with those. I mean, those resources comply with those rules. So if we've got more than 2 violations, we will have a red dot. Between 1 and 2, we'll have a yellow dot, and no violation, it's going to be a green dot. So if we look here, for example, let's have a look at this particular website. We have a red dot for availability and a red dot for security. So if I control click there to navigate to that point, and in the section here, we go to the warnings section. So that's the warning section. We see the bright orange color table that will show us the problems that have been detected. So we can see 3 availability rules have been broken and 3 security rules have been broken. Hence the red dot for both availability and security. We can see the criticality of the rule. We can see the title of the rule, but what's important is what's the description of it. App service has no backup. We can see also a high availability problem. Ensure authentication is enabled for app services, redirecting unauthenticated users to the login page. And every time we provide a link to the global, the specific documentation from Microsoft that will help the administrator to fix the problem. So that's a great way to ensure the quality of your resources. Thing to notice is that those rules can be gathered, in fact, into a standard. So you have those standards that have been that in fact contain some of the rules, and whenever one of the rules is broken by one of the resource, it will tell you that you're not compliant to this standard because it has been detected this number of times on your resources. So if we go into our table again and we look, for example, at our storage accounts, we can see that they break the HIPAA and the PCI standards because, well, it seems that in terms of security, they are not compliant to some of the rules, security rules. Another thing to notice is that you can create your own rules. So if you want to create your own rules, you can. There is an editor for that in the SaaS version, in the desktop version, and in the container version. And you can decide you create them. You can decide you want to apply them. You will have the same behavior. And you can also create your own standards. So if you want to have your in-house standard based on the rules that you've created and also on the rules that already exist in Cloudockit, you can create your own standard. So you will have this kind of information, and it will say violation of standard with the name of your standard. So you know that this particular resource is not compliant with your standard. Then we can see we've got the list of resources that starts here. We start with the app services, Logic App, Key Vaults. Here we see a few of the resources that have been detected in this development environment. But bear in mind that we can scan many more resources than that. So here, if we take the example of an app service, we will have the name of the app service. We will have a short diagram of the resources implied. We have the settings being displayed here. If the app service was on at the time of the scan, we could have a screenshot. App service plan, some more information, again quotas, app settings. Here you can see the data. Here is hidden. This is a setting that you can reverse. So if you want to show this information, you can. But bear in mind that this is confidential information. There's a reason why it's not easy to access it in Azure. Maybe you don't want to show it in a report. So by default, it's hidden, but you can decide at generation time that you want to show it. Again, it means that the account that will be used to scan the documents will need to have the proper permissions to be able to gather this information. The following default documents are defined, host names. You've got some average response time. You've got some total number of requests per day. And then you've got the changes section. We've seen the changes section with a storage account, but we can see it for this particular resource. We can see that the usage property went from this value to that value. So this Cloudockit doesn't analyze this information. It just shows you the information. It's up to you to decide if it's relevant or not. And then for some of the resources, we've got some billing information. So here we got nothing, but in other cases, obviously we would have something because I'm not paying 0 per month. Then we have some information on the Logic apps. I'm not going to go through all the settings for the Logic app, but this is the kind of information you would have. Key vaults, storage account, disks, virtual machines, etc. And when we see the configuration, we will see the amount of workloads that we cover. Also, I will come back on the applications a bit later. So let me show you the documents that are generated. As an example, you can see here, those are the different formats that of report that we can generate. We can generate Excel documents, we can generate some PowerPoint presentation. We can generate a PDF version of the Word document, HTML also, and the JSON file. JSON file can be very interesting, not for human intervention, but the JSON file will be very interesting if you want to automate the analysis of your reports. So you could imagine you've got a scheduled scan that happens every week, and that will generate this JSON report. And then when the report is generated, a script could then get hold of this JSON file and decrypt it, in fact, analyze it. It's going to be much easier than trying to decipher what's the content of a Excel document or a Word document, obviously. Along with those reports, we receive some diagrams. So I've selected the Visio diagrams, and those are the diagrams that are generated by default, but you can select to have less than that, and you can also select to have more than that. We'll see that further in the configuration. If you go to the global diagram, let's open this one, and let me show you when it pops up. So the global diagram is interesting because it shows you all the resources that have been detected in one page. So that can be a great way to spot the problems. If you've selected the compliance rules, and if you've decided that you want to see the result of the compliance rules being broken on the diagram, so that those are all options that you can select, you will quickly spot the red dots that tell you that there is a problem on this resource. And here we can see on this storage account, it says the storage account is not redundant. Your data is not durable in the case of a complete regional outage, etc., etc. So you can quickly see you've got some problems. Here, for example, I can see I've got availability and security problem. This is the web application that I showed you the information earlier. Also, you've got some gray dots that will give you some information about the changes. So we see that it's changed from this value to that value. Again, no analysis, just reporting the information. And also, if you've got an addition, you will see this blue dot, and the description will tell you between which scan and which other scan it was detected. I think we get the time. Yeah, there was a very short delay between both. Other very interesting feature is the ability to get information right from the resource. So if you click on an icon and you open the shape data panel, you will see this information. So not necessarily by opening the Word document every time and looking for the information. Also, you can notice we've got the Linux logo to show that it's a Linux server, a Windows logo here. Another interesting feature is for the VM to be able to see them on or off, depending on their state. So you have a red icon here. It would be green if it was on, and here it's grayed out. Otherwise, it's going to be colored. And if, as you see, when I hover the icon, I can see there is a link. So if I control click on it, it will open a page that links directly to that resource in Azure. So no need to try and get this resource by looking through it. You just control click on the resource in Visio, and that leads you directly to that page, to the page corresponding to the to the resource. So now we'll jump right to the configuration of Cloudockit in order to get those documents. Now we'll demonstrate the SaaS configuration. So first step you have to do is log in and enter your product key. The first time you log in, you will have to enter the product key. The next time you authenticate yourself, you won't have to produce the product key because it's linked to your account. The account in question can be Amazon, Azure, or Google. When you click on one of those, if you want to have actually more information, you can click on this link. It will explain everything you need to know about the credentials. When you click on those ones, it takes you, in the case of Azure, it takes you there. You have to enter the directory tenant name. In my case, this is my development environment. I will carry on there. And then it is sent to Microsoft, where I authenticate myself. And once this is done, we get back there. We can see I'm logged in, and we can select the platforms that we want to scan. If I use this login, if I click on the arrow next to it, since I was the first to log in with my account, I'm also the administrator of the account. So I have some accesses to the information about the account. I will click on account, and this is what I see. As a user, I would just see the product key and expiration date. As an administrator, I see those email addresses of the person who can use Cloudockit with this product key. If I click on send email for user removal, this opens a template of an email that I can use to contact support at cloudockit.com to remove the user I specify here. So it's pretty straightforward, and support will contact you as soon as they can. Well, actually, we'll proceed. So let's carry on with the platform. So again, I logged in with Azure, but I could scan any of those platforms. Let's carry on with Azure. Here I can carry on with the account I use to enter, to authenticate myself. I could use another account and then specify another tenant name if I wanted, or I could specify an AID application. Let's keep going with this account. Again, I need to authenticate myself. And then I need to specify the subscriptions that I want to select. In my case, only one, but you could specify more than that. So this is the Cloudockit interface. On the left, you've got the different pages. Every time you click on one, it opens the page on the right. So let's start with the documents. This is where you specify the reports that you want to generate. You can specify PDF, Word, HTML, Excel. You can specify one of them, all of them, or none of them. If you select Word or PDF, you can specify a Word template. I'll come back to that afterwards. For the contents of the report, you can specify how much detail you want. So we've created templates, Cloudockit templates. You've got the full template, you've got the essential template, executive, billing, and changes. And you can see that full, well, you've got pretty much everything that has been scanned. Essential would be the list of the resources with a few details. Executive would be only the executive summary at the beginning of the document. Billing would be focusing on the billing of each resources. And changes would be showing you the changes, only the resources that have been changed, for example. We are replacing this Cloudockit template. We will be replacing it slowly with the tailored documents, which is currently in preview. This allows you to specify exactly what you want in your report. So, for example, if you take one of the templates that we provided, full changes billing, you can check this one, for example. Well, actually, no, sorry, not check this one, but click on the eye here, and you will select to duplicate that. And once you've duplicated it, full duplicate, you can edit it. You can change the name if you want, you can change the description, and then you can select the different section that you want to add or not into your document. Of course, if you select a workload like bot service, if you select bot service to appear in your document and you don't have any bot service in your document and you don't select the workload bot service, it will not appear in the document. And then you can save your layout. You can use any of those buttons to split the document by resource group, tags, or workload. Splitting by resource group would create a zip file. Instead of a Word document, you would have a zip file that would contain several Word documents. Those Word documents would be, in fact, the split property. So you would have one Word document per resource group, one Word document per workload, or one Word document per tag. So here you will have to enter the tag, obviously. And you will have to select the template that you have designed in order to get the document out of it. Document settings, you can change the culture, you can change diagram resolutions, you got a few settings here. You can specify if you want to include the metrics diagrams, how many days you want to see the diagrams to run on. You already also have a split by here for the document, but that's related to the legacy way of creating templates. So for those templates, it's within the editor. For this template, it's here. So you would select by resource group, workload, tag. And then you can hide secrets or not in the document. By default, we hide them, but if you want to show them, you can uncheck those checkboxes. As I said, you can have PDF, Word, HTML, Excel. For the diagrams, Visio, Draw.io, Lucidchart. If you take Lucidchart, you will have to provide Lucidchart client ID and client secrets. For any of those diagrams, diagram format, we generate 5 files: global diagram, diagram organized by workloads, diagram organized by resource groups, by locations, and by applications. I will show you examples. Well, we've seen examples of that in the documents section. Tailor diagrams generated. This is another way of creating custom diagrams. You can actually create a template. Let's say you want to see only some resources on a diagram. So you would enter a name, a description, and you would say, for example, I want to see only virtual machines. So you specify virtual machine in the filter, you drop them there, you select the properties you want to see, you add them, and this is what your document will look like, your diagram. Now you want to add some virtual network, and this is what you would choose. Here you can drop the virtual network here. Sorry about that. Let's go again here. And select the subnet, add there. And here you go, you have the virtual network and the subnet. If you want to add other resources, you can do that. So every time a virtual machine connected to a virtual network and a subnet are detected, it will show like this in the diagram, in the custom diagram you've created. So don't forget to check the diagram that you've just created, for example. You can create 2D diagrams. By default, they are 2D. If you want to add 3D diagrams, just check the 3D diagram. You can decide to include hyperlinks or to show the warning flags or show the changes flag. Use PNG icon. This is all for performance issues. You can generate dashboard documents, a PowerPoint or an Excel file. There are high-level overview of the scan results. For the SaaS version, you've got the possibility to create a password-protected PDF. So you would enter the email address of someone you want to send over the link, and they will receive the link in one email, and they will receive the password in a secondary email. You could also decide to generate JSON files. Those JSON files are useful if you want to automate the analysis of the report. So instead of having a software that will try to understand what is written in a Word document or what is written in an Excel file, it will directly get the information in a JSON format, which is much more useful for a programming language. And this way you can automate the analysis of the result of the report and implement some monitoring with some scripts, for example. IT Portal. SharePoint IT Portal is being deprecated as we speak, so it might be in another flavor when you see this demonstration, but for the moment it was limited to 25 users licenses, but it's being deprecated. Confluence IT Portal, though, is not deprecated, and if you want to use that, what it will do is, additionally to the reports that are created in Word, Excel, whatever, you can create pages with the contents of the report. So the Word documents are very useful to be able to come back six weeks in the past or 2 months in the past to see what was the state of the subscription at that time. But if you go to the Confluence IT Portal, you will see the latest scan results. So that can be interesting if you want to share the information with your colleagues or your management. Workloads. This is the extent of the workloads that we cover. So you can see compute, container service, web and mobile, storage, databases, data and analytics, networking, lots of them. And this is for Azure. For AWS and Google, we have a bit less workloads. That we are adding more and more workloads. We are adding workloads on demand, which means that we have a few workloads that we think are important, but if a customer of ours contact us and tell us, oh, we'd be interested to have this the ability to scan this kind of workload, could you add it, will do prioritize those demands. Here you can specify for the billing details workload, you can specify the regional code, you can specify if you want to scan the 31 last days or a date interval. You can specify the currency code. If you're an EA or a CSP, you may also add some information. For the CSP, you've got privileged access to your customer account or tenant. Organized content is the section, well, let's start with the right-hand side. It's the section where you specify the filters. For Azure, you have the possibility to filter by resource group name. So if you've got a strong naming convention, you'll be able to specify the names because either you know them like this, or if you have a project name dash prod, and then project name dash prod again here. Well, instead of this, you could simply enter star dash prod, and that will take all production resource groups. But of course, that works if you've got naming convention that has been respected. But if you haven't, you can use the tags, and tags are more flexible. So in this case, you would be able to say, I want the product. Well, if it was environment, you could specify I want production environment resources. So that would be one way of filtering to get only those ones. Organized resource by application. This is where you will specify the tag that is used for regrouping resources under application, the application business concept. I specified tag, but you could be using resource group naming convention, resource naming, hard-coded value. The easiest one is using the tag. So here you would enter the tag name that is, well, the tag key that is used for your for regrouping the resources. Imagine you've got resources spread across different resource groups, but they are used for the same business application. So if you tag them with one, for example, say project name, you call it project name as a tag key, and the value will be the name of the project. Then in this case, you would enter a project name here, and that will create in the applications paragraph in the Word document, and that will create a section for each project name that will show you all the resources that are under those business apps. And that will also populate the by application diagram visual file. Same for the deployment environment. If you've got a tag, again, you can use other than tags, but tags is the most flexible. If you get a tag that that is used for your development environment, say called environment, for example, or dev env, then you just enter that, and that will create a diagram that will have several tabs at the bottom, one for the QA, one for the prod, whatever names you gave to your development environment. Track changes. To activate the track changes, you have to provide an Azure storage account name. If it's AWS, it's going to be S3 bucket, I think, and if it's Google, it's going to be a Google storage. This is the place where Cloudockit will store the snapshot. So every time you do a scan and you specify an Azure storage account and click on Save Snapshot for future comparison, a JSON file will be stored there that will be used by Cloudockit to make the comparison during the next scans. So in my case, that would be CDK scan results. I have to validate its existence. And then I can check on Save Snapshot. If I want this particular scan to be saved for future comparison. If I want to compare, if I also want the results of a scan with a previous scan, I would check compare with a previously generated document. From there, I would be able to specify with which snapshot I want to do the comparison. If I don't want to specify it because I want to specify with the latest and it changes every time, I can just leave it empty. Okay, and that would be the preferred choice for scheduled scan. Drop-off. This is where you will specify the locations where you want your documents to be dropped. So whatever you've selected here will be saved in those locations. So the email, the first one, is just for notification. It's not a location. We do not send any document by email. In the email, what you will find are a list of links to access the documents that have been saved to those locations. And if you don't have access to those links, then you won't be able to open them. Cloudockit storage. For the SaaS version only, this is the place where you can, for testing purposes, for example, not production, obviously, because after some time it will be deleted. So it's a storage location that is on our servers and that we delete after 48 hours or a maximum of 30 days. You can specify the length of time here. We do recommend you use your storage, where again you would specify a storage account name. You can specify also a storage account connection string that would allow Cloudockit to store the reports into that storage account, even if the account that you're using does not have write access to it. So that can be useful to debug that. Office 365 SharePoint. This is another place where you can save the reports. This is interesting if you want to share the reports with customers or with colleagues, much easier than using the Azure storage. Same for the OneDrive. You can specify a OneDrive business folder. It has to be the OneDrive of the account that is being used. Confluence Cloud, specify a site URL and the credentials. GitHub or DevOps. And you can also use a callback URL. Compliance. This is the section where you specify the rules that you want to apply on the resources. And you can use the rules that have been provided by Cloudockit, or you can also create your own rules. So you can create from scratch, new rule, provide the name, description, hyperlink for the how to fix it section, criticity, type, subtype, which is the resource type, and the compliance standards are shown by default. You can share it with your colleagues based on the same license. And here you can trigger the rule with when the following condition is true. You can evaluate the rule and save it. And then when you've finished doing that, you just select the rules that you want to be applied on the resources. The big blue button is for the generation of a report. I won't click on it. For the SaaS version and the container version, you will have the ability to use an API. For the SaaS version, you have to understand that we throttle the number of calls that can be done. Because since it uses our resources, that would throttle capacity to scan for other customers. So we had to throttle that. So for one user license, it's 3 calls per week. For 5 user license, it's 10 calls per week. And for a container, it's you can do as many calls as you want. You're not throttled. We've got documentation at the bottom. But the easiest thing to use that is to click there and set up the configuration that you want to test. When you've set it up, you can click on try it out, and from there click on reset field with current settings, and that populates this box here, this field here, where you can see all the settings that you've done reproduced here. And then the corresponding curl command or partial command can be retrieved by clicking on reset commands with settings object. So you get the corresponding PowerShell, for example, or curl commands. You can also execute your command here. So click on execute, so you can debug from there. You don't have to masterize PowerShell to do that. You can debug from there. You see it failed in this case, and you've got the error code here. So this call is not part of the throttling limit. We do not consider a failed call as a throttling problem. It's really when the scan works. And this way you can debug, and then when you're ready, when you have the proper setting, you can just copy this PowerShell command and use it in a PowerShell script, for example. When you set up a configuration, you might want to save it because it can take time to do that. So you will click on Save Open, well, configure everything, click on Save Open, and then enter a name, enter a description, and be able to save it there. And yeah, that's it. And remember that once you click on Generate, you don't retrieve when you get back to Cloudockit, you don't retrieve the configuration you had earlier. So you will have to save your configuration before you generate, especially for the SaaS version. Then you get the help button that will tell you to contact support@cloudockit.com for technical questions and sales@cloudockit.com for sales questions. That's about it. Thank you.